another problem.
Oh,
You're not gonna use the tongue, right?
you think so? I don't even know what's wrong. No, we got some content. Good afternoon. The Council Committee on Finance will come to order, and we will ask the clerk to please read the bills that will be heard today.
Bill number 130486, an ordinance amending the ordinance approved July 12, 1968, as amended December 12, 2011, relating to pension benefits for employees working on behalf of the Philadelphia Gas Works, by revising the Philadelphia Gas Works pension plan to incorporate amendments thereto, clarifying the operation thereof, and adding certain provisions as required by the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended. Bill number 140278, an ordinance amending Title 19 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Finance, Tax, and Collections by expanding access to property tax relief programs for owner occupants, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 140345, an ordinance further amending Bill number 130325, entitled an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2014 capital budget, providing for expenditures for the capital purposes of the Philadelphia Gas Works, including the supplying of funds in connection therewith, subject to certain constraints and conditions, and acknowledging receipt of the forecast of capital budgets for fiscal years 2015 through 2019, as previously amended by Bill number 130583, by approving a further amended capital budget for fiscal year 2014, an ordinance approving fiscal year 2015 capital budget providing for expenditures for the purposes of the Philadelphia Gas Works, including the supplying of funds in connection therewith, subject to certain constraints and conditions, and acknowledging receipt of the forecast of capital budgets for fiscal years 2016 through 2020. And Bill number 140411, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2600 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Business Income and Receipts Tax, by clarifying the timing of payments relating to the credit for contributions to community development corporations, nonprofit organizations engaged in developing and implementing healthy food initiatives, and nonprofit intermediaries under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 140434, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Housing on behalf of the city to file applications with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for a community development block grant to participate in the Home Investment Partnership Program and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, and for a housing opportunity for persons with AIDS grant, and to file applications with the Commonwealth to obtain grants under the Act of April 12, 1956, Public Law 1449, Section 4, as amended to prevent and eliminate blight, authorizing the Director of Housing and Director of Commerce to file applications to obtain other grants from the Commonwealth, authorizing the Director of Commerce to use the Section 108 Loan Guarantee Program, and authorizing the Director of Housing and Director of Commerce to enter into all understandings and assurances contained in such applications, and to take all necessary action to accept the grants, all in certain terms and conditions.
Thank you very much. We will now hear testimony on Bill number 140345, and the chair recognizes Janet Parrish and Mr. Moser.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Would you please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony?
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Tasco, members of the Finance Committee. My name is Janet Parrish. I'm the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Gas Commission.
Good afternoon. My name is Douglas Moser, Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Philadelphia Gas Works.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today in support of Bill 140345. My testimony today on behalf of the Philadelphia Gas Commission was submitted in written form for the record. As customary, I will not read that testimony, but I'd like to summarize briefly. I'll note that attached to the testimony is a copy of the Gas Commission's resolution and order in this matter, which was adopted at its public meeting held on April 8th of this year. setting forth its recommendations to City Council, which are now expressed in the form of this ordinance before you for approval today. We are requesting a suspension of the rules so the bill may have its first reading at Council's next session. In brief, this bill proposes a further amendment to PGW's fiscal year 2014 capital budget that would add a new $3.3 million line item that will support additional replacement of cast iron main, what we refer to as small diameter main that is 8-inch and smaller. And this funding will allow the replacement of an additional 3 miles of this category of main. However, what we've proposed, it would keep the total budget amount stable at $102.925 million, and that is because at the same time, the Commission has recommended offsetting reductions that total to the same dollar amount in 2 related line items in PGW's budget for which, as we have learned, the budget was overstated by somewhat. And so rather than leave unspent funds in one budget category, we thought it was appropriate to, in effect, transfer them to a new budget category and allow additional main replacement work to be done. Now, with respect to the new line item, the $3.3 million line item, the majority of that work is internal work that will be done by PGW in-house labor, and there are associated administrative charges. But about 40% of the line item will be available for DBE participation opportunities, and for that, PGW has established a target of 20 to 25%. So that, in essence, is what we're recommending before you today, and of course, Mr. Moser can add additional information, or either of us would be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions? This new main line replacement, is this part of the DISC program, or is this what PGW normally does?
You are absolutely correct that this work would be funded by what we call the DISC. It's actually DSIC, or Distribution System Improvement Charge. PGW has in place this charge. It is set up to garner about $22 million a year to support incremental main replacement. And so what the Commission found was that this new line item can be funded. There's sufficient money available through the DISC to fund this work as well as the other work that's been budgeted to attack larger diameter main in the 12-inch and 30-inch categories.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Mr. Moser, you want to say anything?
No, I've also provided written testimony, but I'm available for any questions.
Okay, we have those. Next, Ms. Parrish, you'll testify on 140346, which is a companion bill.
Thank you. Again, I'll begin by saying good afternoon, Chairwoman Tasco and members of the committee. Janet Parrish for the Philadelphia Gas Commission, testifying on behalf of Bill 140346. Again, we have submitted written testimony for the record, which includes a copy of the Gas Commission's resolution and order in this matter, also adopted at its public meeting held on April 8th, 2014. The bill before you represents the Gas Commission's annual recommendations to the City Council with respect to PGW's fiscal year 2015 capital budget. That will be for the period September 1, 2014 through August 31, 2015, and the associated 5-year forecast. Again, we will be requesting a suspension of the rules with respect to this bill. Rather than, again, read from the testimony, in short, what the Commission has recommended this year with respect to PGW's capital budget are some upward adjustments, some downward adjustments, both total less than $1 million. And the net result of that was we came up with a total proposed budget of $89.453 million. That's a $200,000 increase over what PGW originally projected. Again, it includes a significant amount of funding for accelerated cast iron main replacement in the amount of $17 million. That is directed at both the larger size main, as we discussed a moment ago. That is considerably more expensive to replace, by the way, than the small diameter main, which we're more familiar with. And this incremental work, as the chairwoman pointed out previously, is to be funded by the DISC surcharge of about $22 million per year. The overall capital budget is about $13 million lower than the fiscal 14 capital budget was. Now, PGW's testimony provides additional detail on specific line items in the budget. I would just simply highlight three small issues, if I may. One is that we have recommended that $3 million that's been provided in the budget for vehicle replacements would be provided on a conditional spending basis. The Commission would be given the authority to release that funding once PGW had provided the additional necessary supporting data to show the cost benefit of making these replacements at this particular time. The second point I will call to your attention is that, like last year, the Gas Commission has recommended that Council would condition its approval on the budget on PGW's adherence to what we refer to as capital program protocols, a set of standards that govern PGW's administration and implementation of the budget. They're basically identical to what Council approved last year. We just had to make one small technical correction to one section. And finally, I would briefly address the DBE participation that is associated with the budget. As customary, PGW has done a line-by-line review of the budget in its entirety to identify which projects are available for participation after removing or setting aside those that involve internal PGW labor or sole source, contract, etc. For this particular budget, the targets are set on the capital budget side at approximately 12 to 18%. We do not yet have before us the proposals with respect to PGW's fiscal 15 operating budget. That will be filed with the Gas Commission tomorrow, as a matter of fact. And of course, that will have additional opportunities for DBE participation associated with it. So in essence, I think that's an overview of what is before you. And again, we'd be happy to have Mr. Moser provide additional detail or to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Moser, you have any comments to make?
No, again, I've provided written testimony and available for any questions.
Any members have questions? Would you just briefly, Ms. Parrish, give a short overview of how the Commission works with PGW to come to the finalization of the capital budget or any other issue that we deal with in conjunction with the Commission, so that they have just a sense of how all of this is done.
Okay, certainly.
And speak a little more. Your voice is so soft, and maybe I have bad hearing. I can't hear.
Okay. Let me know if you're not hearing me. I'm sorry, I pulled the mic a little closer. In essence, what we do is we have a very open and public process. Once PGW files the budget, it kicks off a process where both the Gas Commission staff, the public advocate who represents all of the residential customers of PGW, and if they choose to participate, which they have in recent years, the PGW union representing the unionized workforce, all have the opportunity to submit written questions, and we get answers to those in writing as well. We also engage in whatever meetings are necessary. Typically, we may do perhaps 2 to 3, or we may have a telephone conference call where we then can delve into some of the specific issues that seem to be either in contention or we need additional information. And we do that, I think, in a very open and collegial way. We'll have a series of meetings. Once we really do that to narrow down the issues that then have to be heard in a public hearing, which would then be our next phase. And then we'll reserve that time for focusing in on those issues where there are disputes or, again, there's need for additional clarification. The Commission staff will then prepare a written recommendation to the Commission. The parties have the opportunity to file objections or exceptions or comments to those. Those are then responded to. We make a recommendation to the Commissioners, and the Commissioners then take that under advisement and ultimately will take action at a public meeting. If there are major areas that are in dispute, the Commission will often schedule a public meeting solely for the purpose of hearing argument or discussion of those areas in dispute before reaching its own decision. And then ultimately we produce, in the capital budget, the case of the capital budget, a written decision by the Gas Commission as well as a proposed form of ordinance, which the Law Department works on with us and signs off on, and we bring it, and we're here today.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. You have? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is that the last bill you're going to testify on, those two
Yes.
bills today?
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now hear from, on Bill 130486. I think this is a bill sponsored by Councilman O'Brien. Okay. We will call, the first panel to testify will be Leslie Mahalik, Esquire, and Robert Chevelle, if I have those names correct. Are they here? Oh, okay. Good afternoon. Would you please for us summarize what this bill entails?
Madam Chair,
I'm sorry.
Robert Chevelle is not here. I would like to submit his testimony to
Sure.
the record.
Give it to the clerk so he can make copies for all the members of this committee.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Leslie Mahalik. I'm an attorney with McAndrews Law Offices, and I practice in the area of special needs and estate planning, with a real focus in special needs planning and planning for persons with disabilities. That includes a lot of different things, and the particular one that we'll be speaking about today is creating a special needs trust in order to protect the public benefits of a person with special needs.
So you're going to explain that, really?
Yes, exactly. We have also submitted written testimony as well that will supplement what we say today. But the instant purpose of the bill today is for the Philadelphia Gas Works pension to be allowed to name a special needs trust instead of just naming a child with disabilities outright. So this bill will actually allow the pension to name the special needs trust as a designated beneficiary. That's a very important thing in order to protect persons with special needs. And the reason it is because a special needs trust is the only trust in the world that a person can have and still be qualified for essential public benefits. Those include medical assistance through the Pennsylvania Department of Public Welfare, commonly known as Medicaid, the only source of health insurance through the state. And it also includes supplemental security income, or SSI. That entitles a person who has special needs in order to qualify for a check every month from the Social Security Administration. In addition, the Special Needs Trust also protects benefits through Medicaid waiver services, which is the only source of residential placements for persons with disabilities. The waiver funding also provides for attendant or in-home care. And that's very important because even if a person is able to purchase private health insurance and pay for that outright, private health insurance typically does not pay for residential services or for attendant in-home care if they need in-home nursing care in order to stay in their community. In addition to protecting a person's public benefits, Special Needs Trust also provides several other very important benefits. Firstly, they are an important money management tool that can really serve to protect a person's money if the person does not have the facilities, him or herself, in order to really manage and invest those monies. Additionally, the Special Needs Trust is going to protect that money against any designing persons who might want to take advantage of a vulnerable person with special needs. Lastly, the Special Needs Trust is going to be a fund to be used for the person with disabilities for anything that they need throughout their lifetime. Public benefits really only provide the bare necessities of life. They're going to provide health insurance and they'll provide food and shelter. But beyond that, public benefits don't provide for much. So a Special Needs Trust is an important tool where it will allow the person to have a fund of money to be used in order to promote their dignity and to allow them to enjoy life to the maximum extent possible. Special Needs Trust can be used very broadly. They can be used for things such as event tickets, and we've had special needs trusts purchase season tickets to the Eagles. They can be used, obviously, for medical equipment that might not be paid for by health insurance, like a wheelchair, but they can also be used for day trips, for companionships, for electronics, really for anything unique to that person that would benefit his life. So long as the Special Needs Trust is funded with monies from a third party, and in this case, if the pension plan specifically designates the Special Needs Trust outright, the pension monies would go directly into the Special Needs Trust and not to that person directly. So as long as that process is allowed, then the Special Needs Trust does not have any payback to the state of Pennsylvania when that person passes away for Medicaid provided to him or her. If the Special Needs Trust is not used, if the pension simply names the child with disabilities outright, that child will get that money in her own name. She's going to lose her public benefits, so she's going to have to go off of her Medicaid, go off of her SSI, possibly lose her residential placement. She would have to use the money that she receives in order to privately pay for those services until that money is exhausted, and she would then need to reapply for public benefits. It's not as an easy process as it might sound, and there's no guarantee that she would be eligible for the same benefits that she was receiving prior. Additionally, oftentimes what might be needed is a court petition in order to move those monies into what we call a self-funded special needs trust, which is the type of trust funded with a person with disabilities' own money if they got an inheritance outright or money through a personal injury action. And those trusts are the type that do contain payback requirements to the state of Pennsylvania. So by properly naming a third-party funded trust directly in a beneficiary designation, we are able to use the third-party no payback trust, and when that person, when the person with special needs ultimately passes away, other family members may be named to receive the remainder monies. So it's essential when we are doing planning for persons who have children with special needs that we coordinate their entire estate plan. That means that their will must name the special needs trust, but also all assets that pass by beneficiary designation. So we work with families to change their life insurance designations, their IRAs, their retirement plans. And in a case like this, we would absolutely work with them to modify their pension beneficiary designation as well. Special needs trusts have honestly very few limits. And the way that they operate is very broadly. The big limits are that they cannot make cash distributions directly to the beneficiary. Cash is going to be treated as income that would disqualify the beneficiary for public benefits. And they can't make major gifts to third parties. But aside from those two things, the special needs trust is going to be able to be used for anything that that person needs throughout his or her lifetime. Are there any questions?
Okay. Are there any questions? Thank you. Councilwoman Blondell Brown.
Thank you for that very thorough explanation and lesson there. So what may have been the trigger or the impetus for the sponsor, thank you, moving this in a way to make it formal to protect citizens in this particular circumstance?
Well, other pensions have made similar changes in the past. Our office was involved with assisting with the Philadelphia City pension to make this change some years ago. I think it was back in around 2005 or 6, around then. So that may have been the impetus.
And so are we late as a municipality? Are we late as a municipality in putting this provision in place for citizens? Where do we stack with regards to other municipalities that may already have this in place?
Mm-hmm. Well, these trusts have been allowed in Pennsylvania since 1987. So before then, you really could not do this, and parents were faced with difficult choices of disinheriting their child with special needs or leaving money to other children. So it has been a movement that has been occurring since that time. So I wouldn't say that this is late. It's not the first, but I think that it's very important that it's being done now.
Thank you again for your testimony.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Thank you very much. That's
Thank you.
very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will next hear from panel 2, Mr. Bialy from the Board of Pensions, Audrey Kosia, I'm sorry I'm not doing this all right, and Joseph Golden. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Francis Bialy, Executive Director of the Philadelphia
Would you
Board
pull
of
the mic
Pensions.
to your face?
Francis Bialy, Executive Director of Philadelphia Board of Pensions. You have my written testimony, in essence, which are statistics as to how many people have exercised the Special Needs Trust for the Philadelphia Pension Fund since its inception in May of 2006, and the subsequent inception applying that Special Needs Trust to dependent grandchildren in June of 2010. As you can see, there's, out of the 26,788 active employees as of July 1st, 2013 actuarial evaluation, 2 employees designated a Special Needs Trust as beneficiary that were receiving that. There were an additional 8 employees have named a special trust, but the survivor is still alive, so the Special Needs Trust for the dependent child has not kicked in yet. So I think the purpose of this testimony is just to illustrate to you that it's, in essence, a de minimis number of people that take advantage of this Special Needs Trust, although to them it's very important. So that's been the municipal pension fund's experience since the inception of the Special Needs Trust legislation.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Tasco, members of the Council Committee on Finance. My name is Joseph Golden, Jr. I'm the Executive Vice President and Acting Chief Financial Officer of the Philadelphia Gas Works. I'm here today in support of Bill number 130486, amended, as proposed by Councilman O'Brien in the amendment distributed to the committee. The bill as amended makes certain changes to the Philadelphia Gas Works pension plan. Bill number 130486 is amended, concerns the addition of Special Needs Trust as survivor options for PGW pensioners, and also concerns a number of technical amendments that are required by the IRS in order to keep the plan in a tax qualified as a governmental plan. In addition to myself, the city's Director of Finance has reviewed the proposed changes contained in the bill as amended, and an actuarial report concerning the same has approved these changes as well. And the Finance Director has approved the changes. The changes have been deemed to be cost neutral to the pension plan by the actuary, and the actuary is Aon. I would also like to note that PGW has worked closely with Councilman O'Brien and his staff with respect to the changes relating to the Special Needs Trust. We sincerely thank the Councilman for his cooperative approach in reaching out to PGW with respect to these changes, and we are happy to support them. I'm accompanied today by members of PGW staff and council, as well as outside counsel, who will be happy to join me in answering any questions you might have about Bill number 130486 as amended. PGW thanks you for your consideration of this bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Kuchia, and I'd like to begin by first thanking the members of council for holding this hearing and for the opportunity to speak here today regarding the needs of Special Needs Trusts within pension plans. I'm the co-executive director of a Philadelphia nonprofit organization called Vision for Equality. We provide training, advocacy, and monitoring services for thousands of people with intellectual disabilities and autism and their families who live in the city of Philadelphia and across Pennsylvania through contracts with the city's Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services and the Pennsylvania Department of Welfare, Office of Development and Programs. I am also the wife of a veteran retired Philadelphia firefighter who served over this city for over 31 years, and equally importantly, I am the mother of a 49-year-old woman with significant disabilities. Her name is Gina. I'm here today to speak in support of the need for protected retirement and survivorship benefits for families with children with disabilities. You need to know just how important an option like this can be to the lives and the future of families who have sons and daughters with special needs. It can hold the key for their loved ones' potential future security and financial stability, helping to provide for their continued full-time needs when their parents are gone. This extra financial support can provide, if done the proper way, the means to protect the person with disabilities' public benefits, yet give the additional help needed to ensure supplemental financial help for their future care when their parents are no longer here. My husband and I know just how important this is since we have a daughter with significant needs, and we fought for 15 years to see that amendment was passed, first in 2002 and then in 2006, to ensure city employees were finally able to leave this portion of their pension benefits to their disabled child through an irrevocable trust. This has been a godsend to us and other city employees. We were no longer forced to choose between rejecting pension benefits for our daughter with a disability or sacrificing our child's much-needed government benefits. We were able to finally add an irrevocable trust provision so our daughter would get the supplemental help she would need, along with government benefits when we were gone. We were also able, thankfully, to go retroactive back for over 10 years since my husband was already retired for a long time to when we initially applied. We know when the years we fought for this meant and how resistant many people were initially, thinking leaving a portion of a pension in an irrevocable trust for a person with a disability would be costly and unmanageable for the city. In the 12 years since this amendment was passed, I am here to tell you less than a handful have applied, as you've heard so today. So it is doable and it is manageable. Based on national studies, most people with disabilities go on to live full, productive lives living on their own. Only a small minority of individuals with significant needs, less than about 1%, require lifetime supports. These are the people and the families that we're speaking about. As parents of children with disabilities, we have acted on our children as their protectors, teachers, and advocates throughout their lives. Our problems are unique due to their vulnerability, in that our concerns for our sons and daughters with disabilities is not just when they're young, but for a lifetime. We worry about them when we're here, and we worry even more about what will happen to them when we are gone. We face each day with a what-if attitude, concern always with their welfare, safety, and future. For us, it is crucial to have in place planning that will protect and support them, and to do so without putting them at risk of losing any possible existing or potential services and government benefits that they desperately need. Most of our sons and daughters, once they reach 18 years of age, are eligible for limited but much-needed government benefits. These benefits are small but essential. They are comprised usually of Social Security income and Medicaid. As you know, eligibility standards for many of these benefits and services have certain eligibility requirements. Income earned and unearned and assets of any kind are considered in determining their eligibility for benefits. Gifts and inheritance, including pension benefits, would disqualify a person from receiving any services, and all government benefits could potentially be put at risk. It's equally important to note that even with these government benefits, even these folks are living a condemned life of scarcity once they are on their own. With these benefits, which are usually around $600 a month, they must pay rent and for their food, transportation, and contribute to their medical care. Most of the $600 they would receive is eaten up by these very basic needs. They are essentially living below the poverty line even with these public benefits. There's nothing left for luxuries, if you want to call them that, to get a new dress, a coat, go to a movie, get a haircut, buy shampoo, deodorant, lunch out, or a vacation. It would essentially be beyond their means. The only way to help them is to have some additional way to protectively supplement their care so that they can have some quality in their lives. A government program like SSI is important for a person with a disability, both for the limited financial support it provides and because eligibility for this program is a touchstone for eligibility for many other needed services. These additional services, such as health care, housing, and habilitation, workshops, day activity services, are vital to the ongoing development and care of people with significant disabilities throughout their lives. Preserving eligibility to these benefits is extremely important, not just to the person with a disability, but also to the state of Pennsylvania and the city of Philadelphia, too. Their eligibility for federal dollars dollars through Medicaid draws down millions of dollars to provide the state and city with funds to pay providers to assist these folks with supports when their families are no longer here to care for them. I am here to ask you to please see these families receive the support they deserve by ensuring their loved ones have all the financial support they need in preparing for their loved one's future, and by so doing, alleviate their fears for the future of their children's well-being. I'd like to conclude on a personal note. My husband and I have been concerned about this since 1991 when my husband left the fire department. We had requested at that time, my husband retired, that the ability to place her money in a trust through the pension plan, any benefits that she might be entitled to. We were told no, that it was not possible. The only thing we could do is leave it directly to her, but not through a trust. We explained in doing that she would lose other much-needed services. The answer was still no. We kept pursuing this change. We hoped somehow, some way, that this would be worked out before we were not around any longer. Remember I said earlier families with loved ones with disabilities live with the, with the what-if mode? Well, the what-if came for us. My husband was diagnosed with a serious form of cancer several years later. His chances of survival were grim, and reality set in. Amidst all we were going through as a family, it struck our hearts that we might, in fact, leave this world and never be able to achieve the opportunity to provide this little bit of extra care for our daughter, Gina. Maybe it wouldn't get to guarantee her that small supplement to help her when we were no longer here. That harsh reality struck our hearts with fear. Thank God my husband survived, and we were able, after we were able to pass that provision, to have it put into his pension later on so that it gives us some sense of security for her. I want to thank God and City Council that finally in 2002 and then in 2006 we passed a bill for city employees to protect their special needs children, allowing for an irrevocable trust. I want to tell you just how much this has meant to these families like us, and to convey on their behalf just how much we appreciate what you have all achieved. We also want you to know that should this effort be accomplished for those in the Philadelphia Gas Works, you will be giving these employees and their families, as you have for city employees, the best chance of a higher quality of life for their loved one with a disability, and will be providing these deserving families with a sense of security, knowing that their loved one will be properly cared for when they are gone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members? Councilman O'Brien.
Madam Chair, I think that concludes the testimony, and I would especially like to thank Dee Kachia for her advocacy early on, and it was that amendment to the city's employees' pension system that led us here today to make it apply to the Philadelphia Gas Works. And I would like to thank Fran Bielli and Joe Golden for your testimony, and also for everybody that participated in recognizing, but also dealing with all the nuances and the fiscal questions that attach to applying this benefit. And I'd like to thank Attorney Leslie Mihalik for coming. Dennis McAndrews is probably the foremost attorney for special needs individuals fighting for their IEPs and their special needs trust. He is probably the foremost attorney in the country, so I very much appreciate him sending a member of his law firm here to explain what that trust is. But on a closing note, we're really talking about a special needs trust that provides for the basic needs that we take for granted, things like haircuts and a coat, pair of shoes, and basic amenities that we just use in our daily lives. So I thank the members for consideration and ask for support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to testify on this bill? Thank you so much for your testimony. It was quite informative. Our next bill is Bill number 140278. We will call to the table Beth McConnell, Jennifer Schultz, and Kelly Grassley. Chair, I'd like to recognize that Councilman Kenyatta Johnson is here and Councilwoman Maria Kiona Sanchez. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Who's going first?
Okay.
I'll go first. My name is Kelly Gasly. I am a supervising attorney at Philadelphia VIP. VIP is a legal services agency that matches low-income clients with volunteer attorneys who provide pro bono service to them. I'm here in the capacity of the very many tangled title cases that VIP assists with. And so many of those title clients, they obviously all are facing real estate tax issues. They're about to become homeowners, and many of them have delinquent real estate taxes that they're struggling with. Which is why this bill speaks so closely to the issues our clients grapple with. I'd like to thank Council through its support of VIP through OHCD. Because of this funding, we're able to assist over 500 clients a year with tangled title issues, and we're also able to assist them with paying the costs associated with clearing title through the Tangled Title Fund. I'd like to thank especially Councilwoman Keona Sanchez, Councilman Johnson, and Councilman Jones for introducing this bill. Which would extend the deadlines for the various property tax relief programs that we have, both those that have been in existence and those that are new under AVI, when it is in the discretion of the Department of Revenue or the TRB to extend those deadlines when they find it necessary. We've seen many VIP clients over the past year coming in who have missed vital deadlines for these programs, for the homestead exemption, for the LOOP program, for their installment plan for their current year real estate taxes. They're missing deadlines because they didn't think they were eligible because they're not record owners. They are eligible without being on title, but they don't know that. They are focused on getting into agreements for their delinquent real estate taxes and avoiding a sheriff's sale of their home, and they're just not applying to all of the other various programs that exist because they want to keep their home. They're also applying to a lot of other types of programs that we have in the city, which is great, but there are so many that they're weeding through that they've missed a deadline. Our clients, they want to obtain title to their homes, they want to be good taxpayers, and in fact, many of our clients are actually current on their real estate taxes. They're not even behind. But they're facing higher real estate tax bills in 2014. Some of them are, and they need the homestead exemption or they need an installment plan to keep up with their 2014 taxes. It's really important that we get these taxpayers into plans and paying their real estate taxes on time every year so that we're not draining the city's resources of collection and enforcement in future years. That's exactly what we need to avoid going forward. That's what Council has spent so much time doing in the last year, and we really support the effort to try to get these people paying their taxes on time and getting them into all of these programs that they qualify for. VIP and all of our legal services colleagues are very committed to working with Council to get more outreach and education out there so that folks know what these programs are so that we can get people in the future applying before the deadlines pass. But the reality right now is that this is still very new information and very new programs for our clients. We need to make sure that we give the city the discretion it needs to allow folks to get into these relief programs when they have missed the deadline, at least for the coming years, before all the information is out there. On behalf of VIP, our clients and our volunteer attorneys, thank you for allowing me to testify today.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Schultz. I'm a supervising attorney with Community Legal Services. CLS has been an active partner in advising and assisting Philadelphia residents to manage the new real estate tax programs that City Council has implemented in the past year. In 2014 alone, we have worked with hundreds of clients to address their real estate taxes. I come here today on behalf of our low-income clients to voice our support for Bill number 140278, which proposes to expand access of property tax relief programs for owner-occupants. CLS would like to thank Councilwoman Sanchez, Councilman Johnson, and Councilman Jones for introducing this bill. CLS believes this bill provides a reasonable expansion of the current owner-occupant tax programs. The primary change proposed in this bill is to grant discretion to city agencies to permit late-filed applications for owner-occupant programs when the homeowner presents hardship or other evidence of good cause. The programs that would benefit from this change include the homestead exemption, the long-term owner-occupant program, also known as LOOP, tax refund and forgiveness programs, and the deferral program. The bill also proposes to permit installment payment agreements for those households over 50% of area median income when there's a showing of hardship. These programs are important tools to providing tax relief to low-income homeowners. The AVI program provided an unanticipated shock to many homeowners in Philadelphia when they received their 2014 tax bill. Despite welcome outreach and public education campaigns, many Philadelphians still missed the message. More importantly, they missed the deadline in 2013 to apply for the homestead exemption. Now, under the current law, facing a bill they did not expect, homeowners are unable to access a program for which they are eligible and which was designed specifically to help them manage their real estate tax bill. The proposed amendments to the law will grant OPA the discretion to grant homestead exemptions to those households demonstrating hardship or other good cause. I refer counsel to the written testimony of our CLS client, Cheryl Coquette. Ms. Coquette missed the deadline to apply for the homestead exemption because she was caring for her disabled grandson and her dying mother. In addition, her mother-in-law, who also passed away just 2 months ago, had dementia and would frequently hide mail that came to the house. For those Philadelphians struggling so close to the limits of their budgets, even a small upset of $400 in a real estate tax bill can mean the difference between managing household bills and a utility shutoff. For the LOOP program, financial benefits can be even more significant. The LOOP program was designed to cushion long-term homeowners from large jumps in home values. Some participants of LOOP would have seen double or triple a real estate tax bill, but for the LOOP program preventing the increase. The bill also wisely instructs the Department of Revenue to make available applications to various programs and requires accounting corrections to tax liabilities within 1 month of being approved for programs. For all of these reasons, we support Bill 140278 on behalf of our low-income clients, and we request City Council pass the bill to expand Philadelphians' access to those tax relief programs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth McConnell, Policy Director with the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations. I'll be very short and sweet. You have our longer testimony on the con plan. I'll come back and offer later. And in it, we just wanted to offer 2 sentences of support for Bill number 140278. As you know, CDCs do a lot of housing counseling and also have NACs that do housing counseling, and many of them have found that there are a lot of homeowners that did miss these deadlines despite outreach. And Bill number 140278 would allow the Revenue Department to grant exemptions to those deadlines for various property tax circuit breaker measures for taxpayers that demonstrate a hardship. And we want to thank Councilwoman Sanchez, Councilman Johnson, Councilman Jones for introducing that bill, and hope you'll support it.
Any Councilman Scola?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your testimony, and we've been seeing with the AVI initiative and the concern with some of the residents of being able to meet the deadlines. And there was a lot of outreach. Council members did outreach, administration did outreach, but we still saw the lack of response, especially amongst the people who needed it the most. And I think maybe there'd be a way administration could do, when you send the assessments out, maybe we could also say what the potential bill would be with that assessment, because they don't relate an assessment to a bill, and they don't know that means that their tax amount is going to go up the following year. They look at that, oh, my house is worth more money. They put it to the side. It doesn't really correlate to say, last year I paid $600, next year I got to pay $1,200. So maybe from this we could get to the administration, we could work with revenue or whatever, that when you send a new assessment next year, you send a new assessment with a potential tax bill amount would be, and that may grow the interest in the taxpayer to maybe pay attention to that, or maybe apply for whatever safeguards they can at that time. I mean, do you think that would work in your favor?
If I may address that in a few different ways, I think that your idea is a fantastic one. It certainly would put in more real terms, in a more direct way for people to understand what those documents are when they arrive. In particular, with the AVI process and the reassessments that went on, they were unable to give the tax amount at the time because the new rate had not yet been set. So it really was a very abstract idea to see these changes in the numbers because it was a moving target when these notices were going out.
And I agree, and I think still in the future, assessments we're going to be sending out every year. Now, hopefully the people who didn't apply for homestead this year can also realize to apply for homestead next year. And, but unfortunately for the LOOP program, it's going to be very difficult since AVI was initiated last year for your tax assessment to triple from the year before, so you would now be eligible for this program. So that's why it's important to extend the deadline for people who miss this opportunity here, because they'll never get that opportunity again to fit into that criteria. So thank you for your testimony.
Any other questions? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Sanchez. Thank you, Madam Chair. The administration had asked for an amendment on the date of effectiveness, and I wanted, for purposes of clarity, if the Revenue Commissioner could come around that amendment. When we proposed this regulation, we did it partly because of what Councilman Squilla said, that despite all of our best efforts, there's a lot of folks who did not apply for Homestead, Loop, and the other relief programs. Our intent with this bill is to give the Revenue Department some discretion, particularly for people who've become delinquent, that folks are able to apply, and in that resolution, that even though folks did not apply for Homestead, that be calculated as a potential part of their plan. The Revenue Commissioner has asked us for a delay in its implementation and to a calendar year, January to December versus effective June 30th. And I just wanted her, for the purposes of the record, to confirm to me that anybody who applies between June 30th and October 1st, which is a effective date, because she needs time to promulgate the regulations, that no one would be denied. So I just need that for the record. Good afternoon.
My name is Clarina Tolson, Commissioner of the Revenue Department and Chief Collections Officer. Councilwoman, the long and short answer to your question is yes. The intent of our department to request for any extension, if that is even necessary, is just to allow us to do the regulations to support this program. If council deems that it is appropriate to leave the date at July, with the understanding that we will not have regulations in place in July, so that we cannot effectively administer at that point, but we'll be working on the regulations, given that we need additional time, that's fine as well. Our intent is to support what is intended through this bill with the additional amendments that have been proposed, or I think that are going to be proposed by you.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to make sure that everybody is eligible who can potentially apply. I appreciate that, and I look forward to working with the administration on the regulations, and obviously with all our stakeholders, and ensuring that we do another outreach effort to folks who missed out on any of the relief programs, including the deferral and others. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'd like to ask one question also.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
I know we put aside money into the general fund for the cover of the Homestead and also for the Loop. Do we know at this point what value we reached as far as Homestead and or the Loop program as far as monies reached for people who have applied?
We do have some stats on where we are currently. Some of that's not finalized. Some of the Loop is still in process and flow.
Is that on the 20 million? Do you know if that's the Loop? Do you know what the amount is?
I will get you that exact amount, sir.
Okay. And also the Homestead, too, if we can get that amount to the chair, just to see what has been applied for and granted up to this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, just so I can be clear as well.
Sure.
Were there going to be other amendments that were going to be addressed? Because I didn't comment, I didn't read any testimony, but I just want to be clear that there were some things that were needed to make it comport to state.
The administration, and I'm fine with that. I just want to be sure that we don't lose the opportunity potentially of this summer to get out some of this information, but we'll work with you as it relates to that, and obviously with our advocates to make sure that we get folks, as many folks on the pipeline. In addition to the data requests, I know one of the concerns where people were applied and were denied, and one of the issues that arose was that your denial letter said you had 10 days to respond. And so one of the things that I would hope that the administration would do is that we would go back to those denials at the beginning and start with them, because there's a long list of them, to make sure that, because those folks at least made the initial attempt of applying, and whether it was a tangle title issue or something else, we'll work with the administration, but we really do need another outreach campaign to make sure that on this round, between now
and your October deadline that we've gone
Understood.
out, particularly to the denials.
Understood. Not a
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, any questions? I think you all will work it out.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. With amendments, yes.
Thank you. Are the amendments here today? Okay. Okay. All right. The next panel will be Ms. Tolson, are you going to testify on Bill 140411? Why don't you come back? And Kim Washington? Beg pardon? Sure. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On this particular bill, what we are attempting to do is the CDC tax credit bill, a program that is so important, created by our colleague Councilman Good. We've been confronted, given the economic downturn, with some of our very generous partners not being able to meet the deadline of December 31st to make those payments. We didn't change the date, but we did want to give the administration the discretion to allow some of our small business partners who are part of this program the ability to work with the Revenue Department on their payments so that our CDC partners do not become delinquent due to their tax credit partners. So it's a technicality. We're not changing anything other than having revenue have a little bit of discretion to work with our small business partners.
Good afternoon. Would you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Chairwoman Tasco and members of the Committee on Finance. I am Clarina Tolson, Revenue Commissioner and Chief Collection Officer. I'm here to testify in support of Bill number 140411, which amends the code chapter entitled Business Income and Receipts Tax by clarifying the timing of payments relating to the credit for contributions to CDC's nonprofit organizations engaged in developing and implementing healthy food initiatives and nonprofit intermediaries. This bill would clarify that payments to CDCs or to community development organizations are to be made in the year that the credit is sought and give the department discretion to allow a business participating in the CDC tax credit program additional time to make the payment to the CDC, giving the business up to 12 months to make the payment. Our interaction with participants in this program leads us to believe that this extensions start only until such time as the tax return filing and payments are due, which is April 15th of the year following the tax bills. To minimize uncertainty for CDCs awaiting these payments from business partners, we suggest that the period for extensions granted at the discretion of the revenue should extend to April 15th following the tax year, rather than a full 12 months. The administration supports the bill with the recommendation to shorten the length of the permissible extension for the payments to the CDCs. We're happy to respond to any questions, and thank you for this opportunity to address you.
Ms. Washington?
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Tasco and members of the Finance Committee. I'm Kimberly Washington, the Executive Director for the Frankfurt Community Development Corporation, and I'm here to testify in support of Bill number 140411, which would give the Revenue Department the discretion to extend the time period in which businesses participating in the city CDC tax credit program can transfer those funds to the participating CDC. I came on to the Frankfurt CDC back in June of last year, and it was pretty much at a time where the previous board and administration were walking away from the organization as the organization was failing. At that time, I inherited a whole range of issues ranging from bad real estate to outstanding lines of credit over $100K and, improper billing and invoicing. I've worked tirelessly with my board and my staff to kind of clear some of those issues up. In addition to those issues, we also had a tax credit partner who is a minority small-owned business who likes to pay the tax credit when he pays his taxes, which is April 15th. So in addition to having to clean these issues up, we were also at risk of losing $80,000, which would pretty much cause our organization to go under, as we are a pretty small CDC. As city council members, you all understand and appreciate the importance of the work that CDCs do and how this tax partnership funding is vital to the CDC implementing our mission to do community development. Without this extension, a lot of small business owners throughout the city who understand and appreciate the need for community development and underserved neighborhoods would otherwise be excluded from participating in this program, and smaller CDCs such as myself would probably go out of business. With that being said, I'm pleading with City Council today to approve this bill, which would allow the Revenue Department to, and within their discretion, give small business owners who have a financial hardship that extra few months to pay the CDCs their tax partnership contribution. Thanks for your time, and thanks Councilwoman Sanchez for sponsoring this bill.
Councilman Good.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner. The bill says that there can be an extension based upon two findings. The second finding is denial of extension would cause hardship to the qualifying organization. And so implied in that is that the CDC wants to keep the partner, but the partner can't pay in a timely fashion. What if the CDC wants to dump the partner?
What if the CDC wants to dump the partner?
For that reason.
The CDC is able to, we just confirm. Actually, may I allow Mr. Tilahuna Fessa to address that so I don't give improper tax advice?
Good afternoon. My name is Tilahuna Fessa. The CDC doesn't have the power to get rid of the participant, the taxpayer in this case, which claims the credit, until or unless the sponsor itself drops out of the program or terminates the program. At that point, the CDC can bring another taxpayer to help them or get into the program. Until that point, the law does not allow the CDC to just say, I don't want that sponsor.
That's the point I was making. The point is, can someone be terminated for non-payment, and before you give someone an extension, are you going to ask the CDC whether they want the partner to have an extension?
For that particular tax year in question, for which the sponsor did not pay the tax?
In other words, if a CDC does not believe that their partner is going to be able to pay long-term and is going to want another partner, are you going to talk to the CDC before granting the extension and locking them into that partnership?
I think, yeah, with this discretion, we can do that. We can talk to the CDCs and find out what the problem is. Once we know what the problem is, then we talk to the sponsor. If that is the way to go to keep the CDC alive in this particular situation, I think we can use that.
Okay, and so you will be doing administrative regulations on
Yes,
the bill?
yes, we will.
So can you include a step in talking to the CDCs? If they want to keep them, they can keep them. If they want to dump them, they can dump them.
Yes.
Yes, we will probably clarify by regulation on this particular bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilwoman? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, now we'll be ready for the big bell, the big one. Chair now calls on the Ms. Deborah McCullough and her group to come forward to talk about Bill 140434, the Consolidated Plan Bill. Good afternoon. I'm sorry. I was looking at your stuff here. Would you please state your name for the record, please, and proceed with your testimony?
Yes, good afternoon, Councilwoman. My name is Deborah McCullough. I'm the Director of Housing for the City of Philadelphia.
Thank you. You want to introduce yourself too, so maybe we get,
Alan Greenberger, Deputy Mayor for Economic Development.
want to proceed with your testimony?
Good afternoon. I will present testimony on behalf of the administration on Bill number 140434, which permits the city to apply for federal community development block grant, home investment partnership, emergency solutions grant, and housing opportunity for persons with AIDS funds, and for state funds from the Department of Community and Economic Development. Incorporated in this bill as Exhibit A is the Year 40 Consolidated Plan, the required HUD funding application. In order for the city to receive funding from HUD, the city is required to submit an approved consolidated plan to HUD no later than August 15, 2014. The consolidated plan also includes a budget for the Housing Trust Fund and related funding sources. With me today are Alan Greenberger, who just introduced himself, and other representatives of the Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation, the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority. The Year 40 Consolidated Plan for the fiscal year, which begins July 1st, 2014, details our plan for spending funds from 4 primary federal sources: the state's Department of Community and Economic Development and the Housing Trust Fund. As detailed in the Year 40 Proposed Consolidated Plan transmitted to City Council on May 15th, the city will experience an overall reduction of $2.689 million in resources. In Year 40, the city will receive $39.309 million in CDBG entitlement funding, a decrease of $740,000 from Year 39. The city also anticipates a reduction of $1.413 million in other CDBG-related resources, program income, and prior year's reprogrammed funds. Overall, total CDBG resources will be reduced from $50.763 million in Year 39 to $48.610 million in Year 40. While the city did receive a slight increase of $347,000 in home funding, HTF funding, which is to say Housing Trust Fund funding, will remain level at $13.5 million in Year 40. Despite this overall reduction, the Year 40 Proposed Consolidated Plan maintains initiatives and programs to achieve the city's priorities: to prevent homelessness by keeping people in their homes, increase affordable housing by producing new units, strengthen communities by eliminating blight and promoting neighborhood planning, and create jobs by attracting and retaining businesses. The city has identified programs and services that are most effective in achieving the city's priorities. These programs and services will remain at level funding in Year 40 and include housing counseling, basic systems repair program, citizen participation through neighborhood advisory committees known as NACs, cleaning and greening of vacant lots through the Philadelphia Land Care Program, neighborhood commercial corridor support, small business lending, job training through Youth Build, and neighborhood-based rental production. The city is not providing funding for neighborhood-based homeownership projects in Year 40. Affordable homeownership projects in the pipeline will be supported with prior year's home and Housing Trust Fund resources. New restrictive federal regulations, the tight housing credit market, and the loss of other homeownership housing resources have made it difficult and costly for the city to pursue new affordable homeownership developments. There are currently more leverage opportunities for rental developments, such as low-income housing tax credit financing and 811 accessible housing funds, to maximize the city's resource to create more affordable housing units. There's an urgent need for preservation of existing affordable housing. The Basic Systems Repair Program, which provides home repairs to enable low-income homeowners to remain in their homes, has over 3,500 homeowners on the waiting list. This program is cost-effective in that the average home repair cost is $10,000, compared to the average cost of over $200,000 to create one new affordable home in the homeownership program. In Year 40, the city will provide $300,000 in Housing Trust Fund resources for targeted preservation for both homeowner and rental housing units. In Year 40, the consolidated plan budget includes $5.035 million in CDBG funding for Community Development Corporation community economic development activities and programs. By a total of $2.698 million, this allocation exceeds the requirements of Council Bill 000716, that at least 5% of CDBG funds be allocated to economic development activities carried out by community development corporations. In addition to CDBG and home, the Year 40 Consolidated Plan includes federal funding from the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS HOPWA program, which the City of Philadelphia administers for the 5-county metropolitan region, including Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery counties. The federal formula for HOPWA funds is based on the historical and contemporary AIDS caseload in the region. Rental assistance to allowed persons with AIDS to rent their own apartments and homes is the largest single expenditure of HOPWA funds. In Year 40, the city will receive $9.465 million in HOPWA funds for the 5-county region, an increase of $1.946 million from fiscal year 2014. Another source of federal funding for housing in Year 40 is the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. In Year 40, the city will receive $3.254 million in emergency solution grant resources. These funds, which are administered by the Office of Supportive Housing, support emergency shelter, homeless prevention, rapid rehousing, and housing retention services and programs. The Section 108 loan program enables the city to borrow funds against future CDBG entitlement grants. In the past, the city used the Section 108 loan program to provide debt financing for economic development ventures and to support housing development ventures. While economic development Section 108 loans are self-sustaining through the repayment of debt, subsidies for housing funded with Section 108 loans must be repaid from CDBG entitlement funding. In Year 40, no new Section 108 loan authority will be sought for housing activities, and budget authority for a loan of up to $20 million is requested for economic development activities administered by PIDC. Thank you for the opportunity to present this testimony. In order for the city to receive funding from HUD, the city is required to submit an approved consolidated plan to HUD no later than August 15, 2014. Additional tables and information required by HUD as part of the funding application will be included in the final submission to HUD. In order to permit expeditious transmittal of the consolidated plan to HUD, suspension of the rules to permit first reading at the next council session is requested. My colleagues and I are happy to answer any questions you may have today.
Thank you. Do you have any testimony, Mr. Greenberg?
No, we're open to questions.
Any questions from Councilwoman Blackwell?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for your testimony. We received testimony, and all of us are very concerned about the continued funding. We see Frank Monahan back there of Habitat for Humanity, of the Utility Emergency Services Fund, and Rebuilding Together in Philadelphia. They have been invaluable programs to our community, and we've really been concerned about funding overall and how it affects these programs. I'd like to ask a question really about with RDA and the land bank and how they're impacted operationally and fiscally as we move forward. And we know that RDA has due to the state statute, they can get as well as they can get properties as well as convey them. So how will you survive, and how will it change RDA's focus, and how will that affect PHDC? We just want a little information before we move forward.
Information specifically about the land bank operations?
Yes.
Okay. I think Michael Coons is here from the Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation, who can talk to us about the land bank.
About that and RDA and how they're affected by these changes.
And Ryan also?
Yeah.
I can step.
No, I can do that. That's all right. You stay.
We had 15 questions for you, Deb, but we decided to just let them do it.
You can start. Thank you, Councilwoman. Brian Abernathy, Executive Director of the Redevelopment Authority. The land bank certainly does have an impact on the authority, our operations, and our future, both fiscally and operationally. Generally speaking, I think the public... Generally speaking, I think Your interaction as well as the public's interaction with the authority has been through our real estate assets. With those real estate assets being transferred to the land bank, it's required us to rethink our long-term mission. What some of you all don't always see is our work with the Office of Housing and Community Development and our financing of affordable housing, which I think we've earned a strong reputation going forward. I think, my staff and I have spent the last year thinking through this challenge, and we've been a strong implementation arm for housing, and there is no reason that we can't be a strong implementation arm for commerce, for the Housing Authority, for the Planning Commission. And so for the Redevelopment Authority to continue to be relevant, we're going to need to expand our mission in ways that we haven't always been comfortable doing. And that's really looking at new partnerships in the city, looking at new funding opportunities. The land bank, as not surprisingly, if we're not selling our property, that reduces our revenue streams. And there's also an impact through CDBG funding as well. So we're looking, we're expecting about a $3 million decrease in revenue just based on the land bank. However, I'm very confident that we have been able to fill those gaps with new revenue measures, and those revenue measures being very specifically neighborhood targeted, looking at renovations, using our maintenance workers, partnering with the Department of Public Property for capital programs, and filling gaps like subletting our office space to other city agencies. So being very creative in how we have looked at our funding mechanisms, our funding streams, and really becoming less dependent on the federal funds is become very important to us.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Kuntz, Executive Vice President, Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation. One other thing I'd like to add is that in creating the land bank, one of the powers or one of the things that we thought we could be useful doing would be acquiring property. And so that would not just for the CDCs and private developers, but also it's anticipated that the Redevelopment Authority will need some product or more product to actually renovate and put back in the market, to repurpose, if you will. So that's one of the ways we thought we could be helpful there.
Yeah, and I actually do want to be clear. I think there is a significant amount of anxiety, certainly on my staff, about what the impact of the land bank is going to do to us. I'm actually excited about the opportunities the land bank gives the Redevelopment Authority, allowing us to refocus on neighborhood and community development in a way that we haven't done in the past. Any transition is nerve-wracking, and I think it's going to be difficult, but I am confident with the partnerships we have built both at OHCD and at PHDC and the land bank that we're really going to be able to create, I won't say seamless, but certainly a strong partnership with all the agencies going forward to really build something special in Philadelphia.
And we're still, I assume, continuing with the plan to lend people to various agencies so we don't have all those complications with who works where for what salary and their benefit structure.
Well, right now we're in negotiations with the bargaining units. Each of the housing agencies have begun their individual negotiations, and so that's something that we plan to work out with the unions, Local 1971.
Thank you. Thank you both very much.
Yes, so first and foremost, I want to commend Deborah, Mike, Brian, Tania, Mary Fall, and the whole team from Redevelopment Authority, OHCD, Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation, for first and foremost working with my staff and I to make sure we aggressively focus on the issue of affordable housing, specifically in the Point Breeze area. Hey, Alan, how you doing? And so Alan's been supportive as well. I see him sitting back during the cut. But in terms of helping us get the RFPs out, Brian and his team stepped up to the plate. We've been turning them out over the last couple of months. And primarily, it's important to me because, as my neighborhood changed, I'm born and raised in Point Breeze. Change is good, but I'm also aggressively focusing on a level of balance and making sure that Point Breeze is a neighborhood for everyone. And so I do thank all of you for your efforts. And I am paying attention to, as we streamline this process with the land bank, that the work that you are doing is paid attention to as we make this transition, because I think the land bank is going to be good for the city, but I think there's still a lot of moving pieces. And so I wanted to say that for the record. Deborah, when you talked about, you just said reduction like 5 times in your testimony. Very eye-opening. When we did the Habitat for Humanity presentation, I'm like, and this is my neighborhood, so you got to understand like the mind frame that I'm in. I'm like, okay, I remember this block. I used to hang out here, and the day we're doing the groundbreaking, and I'm like, okay, as a councilman, I would like to advocate for all the public land aggressively to go to these nonprofit organizations such as Habitat for Humanity, Community Ventures, and they said, well, you got to talk to Deborah in regards to the Housing Trust Fund and the important need for us to have that additional funding from our federal government to support our efforts moving forward. And we are doing some creative things with the redevelopment in terms of land, redevelopment authority in terms of land. I'm working with our private developers in terms of trading off some land for support of affordable housing and while they're doing market rate housing. But what's the plan of working in partnership with our congressional representatives to really make this a priority to bring more money to the city of Philadelphia? I know we do a lot of grant writing. Do we have a lobbyist that's going up there? I come from the background that if you're elected and you're one of our congressional representatives, then I bring on some bacon. And this is part of that bacon in terms of building the affordable housing in the city of Philadelphia. So what is our plan to advocate on a federal level to get additional funding? Because I'm not in Congress, but I don't understand how we have President Obama and we have a Democratic Senate. And the reality is you should be able to bring something home specifically dealing with this issue regardless of whoever it is that's representing us in D.C. So can you give me an overview on what's the administration's plan to address this?
Thank you, Councilman. That's a pretty tough question because, as we all know, we see what goes on in Washington, and this is the 3rd or 4th straight year, Deborah, of reductions. And this one is pretty lightweight reduction compared to the ones we've suffered 3 and 4 years ago in the middle of the recession, I might add. So this is a painful thing, and I think the answer comes in 2 forms. One answer is that we do need to work harder with our congressional delegation and most importantly, other urban congressional delegations, because obviously this isn't just us. This is every city in the United States, big and small. And and I'm just offering a pure personal editorial on this, it does not appear to us that that coalition has formed strongly enough. And we're going to have to work harder. We do have lobbyists in D.C., but it's a much bigger issue than that. The flip side is that I feel like the lesson we're learning from this, and it's a bit of a dangerous lesson, is that we have to go find other partnerships to bring into this story about how we do affordable housing, how we do neighborhood economic development. Because if we just sit tight and rely on this, it's just going to keep diminishing. The dangerous part is that the more we figure out how to do that, the more incentive we give Washington to not support.
Sound like Parks and Rec.
And this, I don't know what the answer to all that is, but we have to work harder than ever, I think, with local partners. And I'll give you an example of one that I think is starting to work. I know it's starting to work. loaning money to businesses through CDBG is fairly complicated. A lot of rules, a lot of regulations, the money's diminishing. We made a decision with PIDC that we need to find other sources of loan money to small businesses, and we're starting to have some success with that. Through the PIDC side, the Goldman Sachs program is an example of $10 million infusion into the system for loans to relatively small businesses. That's, I think, really starting to take hold. And even outside of PIDC, we're evolving a program called KIVA, K-I-V-A, within the Commerce Department that is a unique and very much internet-based way of small, very tiny loans to local businesses that come from, in a way, the public. It's more complicated than that. I'd be happy to talk to you about it another time. Those are the kinds of things we're going to have to do on the housing side. And that's kind of the best answer I can give you at the moment. Brian?
Actually, while we're focused on Washington, I also want to make sure that there's focus on Harrisburg as well. There are a number of proposals in Harrisburg right now that would actually improve our toolbox for neighborhood and community development. Absolutely. So Representative Taylor's conservatorship amendment would allow CDCs to more easily participate in that model, renovate additional houses, and also be able to fund some of their programs. Representative Killian actually just introduced House Bill 2241, which expands the neighborhood assistance program, which we have gone on the record of supporting as well. These are important programs that provide additional resources. The Housing Alliance, Liz Hirsch has done an amazing job in really rallying not just Philadelphia, but statewide on all of these issues. And so while we are focused on Washington, focusing on Harrisburg is going to be important as well as we go through the next few years.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to also kind of echo Councilwoman Blackwell's concern around the cuts that are projected for some of the programs, and wanted to see, in light of the fact that we had a high level of underutilization in some of our relief programs, what is the administration's willingness to add, as opposed to reducing some of these, putting some money on the table for us to address some of these issues, whether it's UESF or, Rebuilding Philadelphia or others. I think the cuts are minimal in terms of the bigger budget, but its impact on the families is huge, and I'd like to see some of that money restored as part of our plan to do outreach for some of our workers. So with that, what is the total cuts that we're projecting to all of these programs? According to the testimony by UESF, we're looking at $455,000.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear what, at the beginning of your question.
I guess the total, what I'd like to see is a chart of what is it that we're reducing. Councilman Johnson said, you said cut 5 or 6 different times. What exactly are we cutting, and how is its impact, to particularly the families we're trying to serve, in light of the fact that we're going to now have to open up some of our relief programs because of underutilization.
Relief, I just didn't hear what word you said, which was relief. Now I heard it. Well, fundamentally, our core programs are not being cut. So basic systems repair is being maintained with level funding through a combination of Housing Trust Fund resources and Community Development Block Grant resources. I'm sorry, I'm just pulling out the budget once to look at that page. You specifically mentioned the Utility Emergency Services Fund, UESF, and that's not being cut from year 39. That has the same level of funding proposed in year 40 as it had in year 39. UESF has had a reduction over several years, in part because it had its funding bumped up when we had the additional resources through the Recovery Act. So it got a one-year bump up because we had additional federal resources. But we recognize the value of those types of, the value of the UASF program, the value of the basic systems repair programs, and that whole group of as you described them, relief programs, that we want to maintain that funding. So that's one of the priorities that we are maintaining, so that those programs are not being cut from last year. As I said, some of the programs that are what we're not funding is new affordable homeownership production. Although we have some things in the pipeline that we're going to make sure that gets done, we're not putting new homeownership units in. But UASF and basic systems repair are being maintained at the same level of funding that they had last year.
You mentioned that you're going to be doing some additional support for rentals. If you were to quantify what are we doing around housing preservation, which is so hugely important, basic systems being one component of that, what is our total investment in that?
The total investment in preservation programs is $15.381 million, which is a combination of community development block grant funds, from some weatherization funds from the state, DCED, and housing trust fund earnings.
In our basic systems repair program, and this is more for the record, if we were to take care of everybody that's on the list, nobody else being approved, how much money would we need to get through that list?
So currently, it would take we anticipate about $36 million to take care of the list, and that's assuming 60% dropout through the approval process and the waiting period.
60% of that, you're saying?
No, that's assuming there's a dropout rate of 60% between the time that we provide intake and assign contractors. There's still a $36 million backlog. And about a 3.5 years at current funding.
Yeah. Have we had a more thorough discussion with Rebuilding Together and Habitat for Humanity to look at how some of their work could help us go through some of that basic systems repair pipeline?
I haven't spoken with Habitat or Rebuilding America. I have spoken at Councilwoman Reynolds Brown's suggestion. She gave me a suggestion earlier when I was before council that I should speak to PCA, so I've spoken to them, but I haven't spoken to Habitat or Rebuilding Together Philadelphia, but I can certainly do that.
I think it's important that we figure out how do we utilize their expertise and their ability to do some of that work for what is low-hanging modifications or improvements in homes to get through that list. I know people entered the basic systems pipeline, but there might be some work that they could be doing that will cost us less as opposed to, and maybe for the folks, you use your discretion of what the cutoff line is in terms of that list. The only reason I say that is because I know every year all of us try to add more money to work through that list as much as we possibly can, but moving forward, we should start having those conversations. And I think as both RDA and PHDC look at their toolboxes, we need to strengthen that. And clearly we can't do it alone anymore. And so to the extent that we're being more proactive and looking at our regulation and being more flexible and using Housing Trust Fund dollars to work through that list, I think it just improves the process. I think the toolboxes have to come together, and what can't get done out of one pot should get done out of the other, and I think it's important that we look at that.
Right, and I can certainly do that, start doing that in short order.
The other thing is, one of the frustrations around sometimes the weatherization versus basic systems, and these were regulatory issues, what gets fixed first, the roof or the window? What are we doing to kind of make sure that there's an approval process that doesn't get someone disqualified for one program because the roof didn't get done, but they're approved for weatherization in the windows? Are we looking at those?
Well, essentially, the emergency repairs come first. So we would perform the emergency repairs, but then while we're there, we typically, and this is sort of going to change, we also perform the other repairs while we're there. So we are moving to take care of the not drop back, just go in and do a roof or go in and do a heater and then wait a couple of years for the other repairs.
Okay. Well, thank you. I look forward to, as was stated earlier, I know we still have a lot of work to do with the land bank in terms of appointing a permanent board and approving policy provisions. For the record, can you tell us where we are in our planning process and the ability to put forth something to council?
Sure. So we issued a request for proposals for a strategic a consultant to help us put together a strategic plan. The responses are in, and we expect to select a consultant the 1st of June. That consultant will work with the PHDC staff and the Philadelphia City Planning staff over the summer and early fall, and we expect to have a plan ready for a public hearing early fall and ready to be submitted after that to City Council probably around the end of November, mid to end of November, with the intent of getting passage before the end of the year so that we can begin to operate as a land bank in January.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Questions? Where are all those people, Ms. McCullough, that were hanging off the rafters 20 years ago? You did such a good job, they just stayed away. We always look forward to the hearings, right? Thank you all for your testimony.
Thank you all.
Anyone else here to testify on this bill? Okay, let me find my sheet. We have next, young lady, would you identify yourself for the record and begin your testimony? And you can summarize it for us, please.
Yes, promise.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Tasco and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Stephanie Fleischer-Selden, and I am the Executive Director of Rebuilding Together Philadelphia. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Rebuilding Together Philadelphia provides free critical home repairs to low-income homeowners utilizing volunteers. We accomplish the bulk of our work through block builds. We were recently in Mantua, where Councilwoman Blackwell was there, as well as in the South Kensington area, where Councilwoman Quinones-Sanchez joined us. But we do work all over the city, and we are delighted to see $300,000 of the Housing Trust Fund set aside for targeted housing preservation. Many Philadelphia neighborhoods are experiencing rapid increases in property values as a result of private investment. Due to higher property taxes from AVI, long-term low-income homeowners are increasingly pressured to leave their homes in their neighborhoods, and we encourage council to consider Rebuilding Together Philadelphia a tool and a resource for equitable development and to preserve homes in the hands of long-term low-income homeowners. So for example, we are part of a community benefits arrangement in South Kensington where we've started to improve the homes surrounding the Taj Deed Community Development Project. Tajdid is being developed by the Arab American CDC and Conifer Realty. And we were brought in at the suggestion of Councilwoman Quinones Sanchez to try and support the long-term low-income residents who experience all of the pain of development and reap very little of the rewards. So that's where RTP can help. With just supporting 4 homeowners in the Tajdid development, we have seen an amazing turnaround of the outlook of these long-term homeowners to the development that is coming their way. We have, for the past 2 fiscal years, RTP has leveraged $100,000 of Housing Trust Fund for roofing repairs. Through an agreement with PHDC, the homes that RTP rehabs are eligible for roofs from PHDC contractors. This partnership has allowed us to expand our critical repair work for needy homeowners. Without secure and impermeable roofs, there really is no point in doing any other work in people's houses. We recently combined PHDC roofing and RTP volunteers on the home of John M. in Mantua. John is a veteran with tours in both Afghanistan and Iraq. He has 3 lovely daughters who had to use only a tub. That tub was leaking as well as the roof. John is employed full-time at U.S. Airways but was unable to support these repairs on his own. Despite working the overnight shift, John was up every morning of the 4 days that we were there, having worked all night long, working side by side with our volunteers. He and his daughters are, of course, very grateful for the tub, but what's going to keep John and his daughters in that home in Mantua is the PHDC roof, which is critical to remaining in the home. With our $100,000 in Housing Trust Fund support, we've completed 12 roofs in fiscal year 13, 15 houses in fiscal year 14, but we were tapped out by April 5th, and we have many, many homeowners waiting on our list that we would like to be able to serve. RTP supports increased funding for the Housing Trust Fund and strongly supports passage of Bill number 140443, introduced by Councilman Greenlee. This bill would increase funding to the Housing Trust Fund by raising the mortgage deed and recording fees by $5. Councilman Johnson asked what we could do. If it's not with federal dollars and not with state dollars, we're going to have to find the money right here in Philadelphia, and Councilman Greenlee's bill is one way to do that. The RTP-PHDC collaboration is a tremendous benefit to the communities we serve all across Philadelphia. In-kind roof repairs from PHDC has enabled RTP to help many more homeowners and do it cheaply and effectively. Ensuring safe and secure homes for long-term residents is critical to revitalizing all of Philadelphia, and we urge you to maintain the $300,000 for targeted housing preservation in the Year 40 Consolidated Plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you say you can provide services throughout the city?
We do.
It's not income driven?
It is income out. We are based on 80% of area median income is our income eligibility threshold.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next, Councilwoman Blackwell.
Yes, let me thank you. I remember Christmas in April 100 years ago, and we are grateful for the evolution to where we are. And yes, it's a wonderful job that you did for that gentleman and his daughter. So just phenomenal. We thank you, and certainly we agree with your testimony.
Thank you, and thank you for all your support and for coming out both of those days. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We're going to be in touch with you. Okay? Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Beth McConnell, Policy Director with the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations.
What's your name
PACDC.
again?
Beth McConnell.
Oh, yes.
PACDC. You have longer written testimony that I will shorten, summarize today.
Thank you.
First of all, Chairwoman Tasker, thank you for the opportunity to testify. We really do appreciate the hard work that city departments have done to mitigate the harmful effects of more than a decade of cuts from Washington to CDBG, home program, and other federal funds. And of course, while funding has decreased, the need has not. We need approximately 60,000 more units of affordable homes just to meet the needs of residents at or below 30% area median income. And rising property taxes mean many low-income homeowners, renters, and small businesses are facing growing pressure to remain in their homes and neighborhoods. And too many of our neighborhood commercial corridors are plagued with vacancy, poor property conditions, and litter, hurting small businesses that are struggling to survive. Locally generated funds for the work that's outlined in the CON plan are inadequate to meet these enormous needs. While we applaud City Council for creating the CDC tax credit program and the Philadelphia Housing Trust Fund, Councilwoman Blackwell, Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, I know you the leadership in creating that fund many years ago. The city's general fund contribution to the work is minimal at just about $3.05 million, down from over $5.5 million in FY07. Nearly all of these funds are allocated just for vacant land management in FY15. So we want to urge Council to work with the administration to increase local funds for affordable homes and neighborhood economic development to supplement the federal dollars in the proposed CON plan. Specifically, we want to support passage of Bill number 140443 before the end of Council session. We really want to applaud Councilman Greenlee for introducing that bill last week. That will increase the funding to the Housing Trust Fund by raising the mortgage and deed recording fee by $5. That could raise about an additional $750,000 per year and could help restore some of the cuts to programs that build and preserve affordable homes. And we do applaud the administration for proposing to refund some of the targeted housing preservation that Stephanie spoke of in FY15 after funding was eliminated in prior years, and also hope to work with Council in the coming year to find other sources of revenue that can make an even more significant impact to address the massive need for affordable homes in Philadelphia. We also want to urge Council to work with the administration to redirect some of the funds set aside in FY14 for property tax relief programs towards housing counseling agencies. Also but want to spend a little bit of time talking today about investing more resources in our neighborhood commercial corridors. We really want to applaud the administration for investing more resources in the FY15 proposed CON plan for the corridor management program by reprogramming about $420,000 in CDBG resources that were unspent in prior years. But we urge Council to work with the administration to leverage those funds by providing $580,000 in new general fund dollars for a total of $1 million to supplement the CDBG resources for corridor management and cleaning programs. Of the more than 200 commercial corridors in the city, Commerce is only able to fund fewer than 19 through the cleaning and management programs. And additionally, some distressed neighborhood corridors, particularly in the Northwest, are unable to receive CDBG funding because of federal program restrictions. General fund dollars could help direct some resources to those corridors and expand the cleaning program also on the corridors in which Commerce will be doing some new management services in FY15. In closing, more than 42%, that's more than $20 million of Philadelphia's CDBG allocation is spent on operational costs for the city agencies in FY15, according to the Year 40 plan. Those dollars are then not available to community organizations that provide critical services, support, and economic development activity in our neighborhoods. The work that city staff does with CDBG funds is very important, but it's past time for the general fund to step up and help to replace some of those dollars. At a time when parts of the city are seeing new private investment and growth, it's really our responsibility to invest public dollars in equitable development strategies that benefit the neighborhoods and residents that would otherwise be left behind. Thank you for allowing us to provide testimony.
Your testimony, Bill 140443.
Yeah, Councilman Greenlee introduced that bill last Thursday, and that would increase the mortgage and deed recording fees by $5 for the Housing Trust Fund portion.
Okay. I just want you to know it's not before us today.
No, I understand.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's what we were...
Yeah, no, as part of, obviously, allocate the Housing Trust Fund resources in the CON plan. So I just want to mention moving that bill forward will help increase more resources for next year's CON plan.
Okay. Sorry.
Last but not least. Hi, Councilwoman Tosco and members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the Year 40 Consolidated Plan. I'm Frank Monahan, Executive Director at Habitat for Humanity Philadelphia. We build homes for homeowners who earn between 30 and 60% of the median income. We also restore and preserve existing homes for low-income homeowners by repairs, modifications, and weatherizations. At Habitat, we very much appreciate that OHCD is facing gigantic budget cuts from the federal government and that Philadelphia's CDGB allocation is being cut another $740,000 in fiscal year 15 alone. We understand that these cuts hurt all the agencies working to preserve, restore, and build safe and affordable homes in Philadelphia. We appreciate the hard work that the city has done to work around these cuts. While we appreciate council support for the CDC tax contribution to affordable homes and community economic development is minimal at just over $3 million. $2.39 million of that is allocated just for the vacant land management. We are heartened to see, though, an additional $300,000 for home preservation funding in the revised consolidation plan. I urge council to consider allocating more funds so that organizations like Habitat and Rebuilding can stabilize families in their homes. Like Councilwoman Sanchez said, I really believe we can leverage a lot of the city funds to be able to do a lot more good for families than all of us trying to do it by ourselves. It saddens us that fiscal year's 15 plan eliminates all funding for affordable home ownership production. Homeowners stabilize communities, providing a much-needed tax base for the city. I would also urge you to reconsider this line item. Habitat receives hundreds of eligible low-income applicants each year to join our program, but we are unable to fund all the production required to fill the need. So we urge council to work with the Nutter administration to increase local funds for affordable housing as part of this year's budget. And we also urge you to please pass Bill 140443, introduced by Councilman Greenlee last week, increasing the funding to the Housing Trust Fund. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Where do you suggest we get the money from? Got to pay for the school district.
Let me thank you all for the
We
work
don't
you do
agree with that.
and your wonderful programs. It
Thank
made
you.
such a difference to transform communities. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you very, very much.
I thank you all for testifying too, and I'm going to talk to you about transforming communities up in the 9th District.
Okay.
Thank you, bye. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else here to testify on these bills? This bill. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Thomas. I'm from the Utility Emergency Services Fund. I am the Program Director for the Utility Grant Program. I want to thank you for the opportunity to submit comments here today. And I'd like a special thanks to all the councilwomen who support USEF ongoing. Utility Emergency Services Fund helps vulnerable families who are facing utility shutoffs or who had their utilities already shut off. We also assist with rent, mortgage, security deposits, and oil. Beginning in fiscal year 2012, USEF has implemented a case management-based housing stabilization program. I want to thank OHCD for its continued support of USEF. Through our partnership with OHCD, we have been able to prevent the loss of heat, electricity, and water for over 160,000 families since 1983. Last year, during fiscal year 2013, USEF assisted 2,677 very poor families. Their average annual income was $13,109, or 75% of the federal poverty level. 82% were female heads of household. The average family consisted of a female adult with between 1 or 2 children. The Year 40 plan proposes a $455,000 cut from the fiscal year 2011 level of $1,525,000. This means that 1,300 more very low-income families will be without utility service in fiscal year 2015 than in fiscal year 2011. Since USEF is the last resort, these families have nowhere else to turn to. The cost of not providing this utility assistance will be immense. According to the Cold Facts, a study presented by the National Fuel Fund Network, the National Low Income Energy Consortium, the National Energy Assistance Directors Association, with support from Citizens Energy Corporation. Not providing utility assistance results in severe consequences. Some obvious and not so obvious, such as homelessness, malnutrition, the disintegration of families, including children removed from their homes because of loss of heat or electricity, seniors forced to sell their homes because they cannot keep up with energy bills, or the disruption of a child's education because their parents can't pay the energy bills and are more likely to move frequently, changing schools and interrupting their children's educational development. According to Cameron Brown, Executive Director of the Colorado Energy Assistance Foundation, inability to pay utilities is second only to ability to pay rent as a reason for homelessness. Families will not purchase adequate food or medicine for their children, resulting in the extreme costs in terms of unhealthy Philadelphia children and the long-term effects it produces. Families will not be able to afford their utilities, or they may try to pay the utilities and not pay their mortgage or rent, setting the stage for homelessness. The families will be at increased risk of homelessness, costing the city much more. Study after study clearly establishes the relationship between the provision of utility assistance and the prevention of homelessness. For example, a 2006 Colorado study states that the inability to pay the home energy is the second leading cause of homelessness for families with children. To pay for utilities, according to the 2010 study by the National Energy Assistance Directors Association, about a third of low-income families went without food for at least a day. Almost half went without medical or dental care. More than a quarter were unable to pay their full mortgage or rent payment. Many were evicted, foreclosed, moved in with family or friends, or moved into shelter or became homeless. For the past 2 years, USEF has worked with the city's shelter system to resolve the utility arrearages of approximately 150 families who have been forced to remain in the shelter system due to these high arrearages, preventing the families from obtaining new utility service and therefore housing necessary to leave the shelter. Solving these utility arrearages has resulted in addressing the homelessness of these families. The USEF Utility Grant Program is extremely cost-effective and efficient. Not only does every CDBG dollar go to direct assistance to vulnerable families, every dollar is doubled, leveraged 100% by the 3 Philadelphia utilities. This means if $445,000 is not available for utility grants, then the vulnerable families will lose an additional $455,000 in leveraged funds, resulting in almost $1 million in lost assistance. USEF is extremely efficient in implementing the utility grant program, and each year we expend all funds. The poverty rate in Philadelphia is 28%, which means 28 out of every 100 Philadelphians live in poverty, which means 14% is in deep poverty. Please take a look at the poverty map, which is divided by councilmatic districts and wards, which shows that in some wards, more than 45% of Philadelphians live in poverty. The map on the right indicates families receiving utility and housing assistance in fiscal years 2009 to 2013 from the Utility Emergency Services Fund, which has had an impact in those poverty-stricken areas. On behalf of the 1,300 families who would be without utility service or worse, I respectfully ask that the $445,000 is restored. It will be leveraged into almost $1 million, and problems will be prevented before they occur. The provision of utility assistance is more proactive and less expensive approach to larger problems that the city will have to contend with, including homelessness resulting from the loss of utility services. In conclusion, I sincerely thank OHCD for its overwhelming support of USEF to assist vulnerable families for the past 31 years, and especially over the past few years in which OHCD has helped to address the rapidly growing need for utility assistance under extremely difficult funding situations. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of council? Thank you. You do a very fine job, and we appreciate all the work that ESF does.
Thank you so much. No, my
let John
sentiments,
Rowe know.
exactly. Yes, we thank you. And all that you said about people not being in the shelter system and all that goes with it is very, very, very important. Very important service that you provide. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, is anyone else here to testify on this legislation? Bill 140434. All right, thank you. We will now go into our public meeting, and the chair calls on Councilwoman Blackwell to vote out bill number 140345.
Thank you. This committee reports 140.
Suspension of the rules.
345 out of committee with a favorable recommendation, and also recommendations for suspension of the rules so as to permit first reading at our next session of council.
Has been moved and seconded that bill 140345 be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation, and that the rules of council be suspended so that this bill can be presented to council's next session. All in favor? Aye. Is there any opposition? There being none, the bill is passed. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell for Bill 140346.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We move that bill number 140346 be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation, also a recommendation for suspension of the rules so as to permit first reading at our next session of council.
Second. Has been moved and properly seconded that Bill 140346 be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation, and that the request for the suspension of rules so that this bill can be heard at council's next session. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? There being none, the bill is carried. Chair, I request Councilwoman Blackwell to offer an amendment to Bill 130486.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the amendment to bill number 130486 be adopted.
Second. All in favor of Bill? Thank you. All in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Aye. Okay. Now, Chair calls on Councilwoman Blackwell to report Bill 130486 out of committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that bill number 130486 as amended be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation, and also a recommendation that the rules of council be suspended so as to permit first reading at our next session of council.
Second. Has been moved and seconded that Bill 130486 as amended be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation and a request that the rules of council be suspended so this bill can be heard at next council session. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell for Bill 140278.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the amendment to Bill number 140278 be adopted.
Second. Has been moved and seconded the amendment to Bill 140278 be adopted. All in favor? Aye. Is there any opposition? There being none.
And on the amendment, did you have that?
I think it's in the amendment.
No, in the amendment it says July, it said January, what's your amendment? Hold on, let me make sure for the record. Yeah, it says July 1st, and it should be October 1st.
Is that the amendment?
Yeah, it was changed as part of what was the request. That's why I had asked the commissioner.
Okay.
to go on
So the
record.
amendment will reflect that it's changed.
To October 1st.
So that's the amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Not at all. Madam Chair, we move that the amendment to Bill 140278 as corrected be adopted.
Second. Has been moved, seconded that the amendment to Bill 140278 as corrected be adopted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? There being none, this bill is passed. The amendment is passed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill number 140278 as amended be reported out of committee with the favorable recommendation, also a recommendation for suspension of the rules so as to permit first reading at our next session of council.
Second. It has been moved and seconded that Bill 140278 as amended be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation and a request for the suspension of the rules so this bill can be heard at council's next session. All in favor? Aye. Is there any opposition? There being none, the motion's carried. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell to report out Bill 140411.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill number 140411 be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation, also recommendation for suspension of the rules so as to permit first reading at our next session of council.
Second. Has been moved that Bill number 140411 be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation and with a request that the rules be suspended so this bill can be heard at council's next session. All in favor will say aye. Aye. And is there any opposition? There being none, the motion's carried. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell for Bill number 140434.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill number 140434 be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation and also recommendation for suspension of the rules so as to permit first reading at our next session of council.
Second. It has been moved and seconded that Bill 140434 be reported out of committee with a favorable recommendation and that the rules of council be suspended so this bill can be heard at council's next session. All in favor? Aye. Is there any opposition? There being none, thank you. Is there any other business brought before this committee? There being none, the committee is adjourned. Ms.
Thank you.
McCullough, may I see you, please?